You know, landlubbers, I'm torn. And I don't mean Natalie Imbruglia torn. That's a 90s joke for all you 90s folk out there. I'd say that I have a greater than normal drive to try and find common ground with people. And I think that's because I'm a pretty hardcore nerd, but also a gamer who's serious enough to record things for YouTube. Now, I don't mean to say that nerds and gamers can't be socially well adjusted. But I do mean to say that I can't be socially well adjusted. Or whether or not I can, I'm not. At the very least, I wasn't socially well adjusted growing up. Just sort of like different from all the other kids. And I'm not saying this because I want sympathy or pity or anything, it's just sort of true. I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, and I had a lot of difficulty making new friends. It wasn't really until high school that I made, lasting friendships, although part of that was simply because half the kids I knew growing up all moved away. The odds against that have to be pretty good. At times it felt almost like divine intervention. I mean, even things that appealed to kids everywhere didn't really work the same way when I grew up. For example, I must have been at the only elementary school in the mid-early 90s where the Power Rangers weren't popular for more than a couple of months. Seriously, by the time I was in second grade, everyone made fun of me for liking Power Rangers. I mean, we're talking 1994 here, 1 year after the Power Rangers came out, so I don't know, I thought the Power Rangers were cool. To be honest, I still think the Power Rangers are cool. I was watching them through college. That's right, ladies, still single. Come to think of it, the only one major, cultural hit that didn't manage to let me down in some way, in terms of relating to other kids my age, was Pokemon. Yeah, Pokemon was a real game changer, in more ways than one. But that warrants its own discussion, probably a full episode at some point. No, what I'm actually here to talk about today is multiplayer gaming. As I already mentioned, I have sort of a stronger than average drive to try and make connections with people. And I think that's because when I was growing up, I always felt sort of out of place. So obviously, conceptually at least, I really like the idea of multiplayer games. Remember your algebra, kids. Games plus friends equals awesome. Unfortunately, it's not actually as simple as I make it sound. For one, in order to partake in multiplayer gaming, you sort of need multiple players. So no matter how interested you are in the idea, you need at least one other like-minded person, which can often be a challenge, especially if you're already struggling with the problem of trying to make new friends. I present to ye landlubbers Exhibit A. These ships come from a game known as Pirates of the Spanish Main, or Pirates of the Cursed Seas. Yeah, they sort of had a lot of trouble nailing down the branding on this game. Probably didn't help its longevity in the long run. But if it isn't obvious simply by looking at them, Pirates is basically the coolest game that was ever created. Unfortunately, despite my repeated lobbying to all of my friends who basically I've known since the game was released, I've had difficulty finding anyone who wanted to play more than a couple of games in their entire lifetime. I can really only think of about 3 people who would play with me on even a semi-regular basis. Chief among them, Top Hat, who you might know from the various videos with Top Hat in them. But as I've said, and I'm sure as you can plainly see, Pirates is a fantastic game, if not easily the best game ever created, and yet no matter how cool it is a multiplayer game that still needs multiple people to play, and as such, it is problematic. Secondly, there's the whole issue of competition. Now, believe it or not, I'm not generally a terribly competitive person. You know what I did in gym class? A lot of aggressive walking and non-confrontational scorekeeping. I'd say a good half of all multiplayer games created are competitive, at least to some degree, if not more so. Nowadays, it's a lot rarer to find a cooperative game. Now, don't get me wrong, friendly competition from time to time can be a lot of fun. Of course, it can also be really problematic and very stressful at times. So it's obviously not quite the same thing as multiplayer gaming as I prefer it, which is cooperatively. I mean, think about it. When you and your buddy are sitting side by side on the couch wailing on the Foot Clan with your ninja weapons, don't you sort of feel like you're working towards the same goal? You're having the same experience as opposed to experiencing the same game but in a different way? I don't know. It's hard for me to explain, but I feel like maybe if you're also not a competitive person, you'll probably have some understanding of what I'm trying to get at here. As I mentioned, co-op games are rare nowadays. Their golden age was my dark age of trying to make friends with other kids on the playground. So the timing there didn't exactly work out perfectly. I've always loved a good co-op game. To this day, I'm still searching for them. In fact, that's what led me to Skylanders in the first place. Although that didn't exactly go so well. Nor have my other attempts at co-op gaming. And of course, that all leads back to needing a separate interested party for the multiple part of the multiple player gaming experience. And then on top of that, there's the whole online gaming thing. You see, as rare as co-op games are nowadays, it's even more rare to find a game where you can actually play the game with someone in the same room at the same time. With the advent of the internet age, there's been a big push to make the internet a tool for every conceivable means. And one of those is to connect people with which to play games. And you know, that's great. Connecting people in new ways is awesome. The only problem for me is the same problem I have with social media in general. It just sort of feels kind of hollow and insincere. I mean, randomly liking someone's Facebook page is not the same as actually being their friend. And I feel like a lot of people have lost sight of that, but that's a subject for a separate old man rant at some point. There's absolutely nothing wrong with online multiplayer games. It's just sort of a different experience. In much the same way that the whole competitive gaming is a separate experience from what I typically enjoy. And of course, in addition to that, you have to factor in the technical complications involved in online multiplayer. For example, some people have the worst internet connection known to man, which is basically a dial-up internet connection in a clown costume. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about how long it actually takes me to upload these videos. It's a depressing factoid that I'll spare you. And for me, if you're not going to be playing the game actually with someone, then I feel like I'd rather just have a single-player experience. There's a lot more control over what goes on than dealing with things like off-site servers and unstable internet connections and power outages. Just any number of things can go wrong and ruin the experience. Like I said, I'm torn. Nintendo and Sony have been talking big games about making gaming a more social experience, and ever since they first started talking about it with the Wii U, I was skeptical. But now that we got the PlayStation 4 talking about its video share feature, and we've got the Miiverse heading to mobile devices like tablets and phones, I mean, it could be a whole new generation of gaming, but I'm just not sure how I feel about it. To me, it seems like it lacks the genuine connection that multiplayer had back in the 90s, when you would just sit on the couch and play GoldenEye, or Double Dragon and Battletoads, or who knows what. Now, I'm all in favor of having a greater ease of sharing these types of experiences, but what if you have one friend who you want to play games with, and you want to hang out at the same time? These online multiplayer things, they don't often allow you to play the game in the same spot. You have to play them in different places. Is setting up two TVs in the same place and connecting over the internet 4 feet away really worth all the trouble? To be honest, without full experience or details even about what they're planning for the next generation, it's hard to really say firmly how I feel about these things, even if I did have a solid stance on them. I guess the only thing really left to do is to see how things pan out once we have more information. But as always, I welcome your opinion in the comments, and I'd love to hear what you guys think on the matter. And don't forget to leave any suggestions for future subjects of Captain's Cabin videos in the comments as well, or on Twitter. But I guess that's about all I have to say for today, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Illusion never changed into something real. I'm wide awake and I can see the perfect sky is torn. Illusion never changed into something real. Crap, the camera's still on.